How is everyone doing tonight? In 2021 at Washington Park, as I waited in line for my golden chance to speak with him, I saw how he listened to each and every person and what they had to say. He cared about what each person had to say. He cared about my story, and he listened to my mother. With Beto as our next governor of Texas, I'm confident that he will fight for our right to make decisions for our own bodies. Yes. And I can be assured that I will be able to focus on my education when I walk into school and not worry about my safety. So for me, as a place my vote is an extremely important election. I know my vote will count for something. Voting Beto into office means that I am assured that the great state of Texas will be in good hands and our future will be brighter. So it is a great honor that I introduce to you our future governor of Texas, Mr. Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Good to be with you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Please take a seat if you got a seat. I would stand on the box, but then my head would hit the ceiling. Hey, I was asked by a fellow El Pasoan who followed us out here. We just drove out here this morning. We stopped for a great town hall in Pecos in Reeves County. Councilmember kicked us off. She did an amazing, amazing job. There goes Greg Abbott with the grid again. Sorry about that, folks, but somebody will find that light switch. We'll get it back on, or maybe the grid really went down. We'll see, one or the other. So, wouldn't it be nice if we had a governor who could keep the lights on? You know what we're doing now? I'm there. All right. Hold on. It's all right. I'll even give you the microphone. It'll just be nice. It's all right. It's all right. So listen. That's just how we say hello in West Texas. That happens. We got to tell that to our East Texas friends. So a friend of mine, as we walked in, said, did you expect to see this many people in Midland, Odessa? And I said, you know what? I'm not surprised that this many people came out. It always makes me feel good. And for anyone who wants to be part of the conversation, even those folks who are leaving right now, they are like, sir, I'll give you the microphone. We'll give you the microphone. But you can't disrupt the meeting. Sir, if you'll just be cool, we'll let you have the microphone. This meeting's for everybody. I don't care who you voted for last time. I don't care who you vote for next time. Before we're Republicans or Democrats, we are Texans. We are Americans. We are human beings. We're going to be good for one another. We're going to treat each other with respect. You're welcome to be here, but you got to be cool. We'll give you the microphone. Let's do this, sir. If you'll be cool, just hold on a second. If you'll be cool, this is the way it works. I'm going to talk, introduce myself. I'm going to turn the microphone over to the people here. And as a demonstration that we are not afraid of each other, we're not against each other, even if you're here to say something critical, I'm going to give you the microphone. But If you continue to interrupt and are disrespectful, then I'm not going to do that. Okay? Thank you. We've got a deal. We've got a deal. Ms. Connor, we've got a deal, okay? We thought we had a deal. All right, Cynthia, he's got to stay or he's got to go. One way or the other. It's hard for us to continue this meeting. All right. Listen.
So as long as they are quiet, they can stay. His wife cannot because she hit somebody, but as long as he can stay.
Yeah, we cannot be violent towards one another. That's one strike and you're out on that. If you have something to say, even if it's critical of us, it's okay. And I'm going to let you say it, all right? That's the kind of campaign. You all, just let me know the last time Greg Abbott came here, held a town hall meeting where anybody can grab the microphone
Right,
and say anything they want to.
everybody to please be quiet so we can continue. Shh. Here we go. We're going to continue.
Listos?
Ready?
Westals? Okay. Hey, let's start over again. How are you all doing tonight? Thank you for that. Let me start out by saying some things that I think we are all for. And we can check each other on this if we're not. And that's why we have two microphones. So after I finish speaking, we can hand it over to you, okay? Folks, let's be cool. Let's be cool with each other. That includes people who are supportive of us. Let's be good to everyone, okay? So first things first, I try to think about the people that I admire most in this world. And there are a lot of them here in this room right now. I think about my friend Andy Hernandez, who I met on a past visit to Odessa. This guy served this country in uniform in Vietnam. Went to a war that America didn't understand, did everything that this country asked him to do, came back not to ticker tape parades or pats on the back or thank you very much for your service. At best, he was met with shrugs and indifference. At worst, people were mad at him, maybe even hated him for doing what his country asked him to do. He came back here. He taught. He joined law enforcement. He was a state trooper. He helped to build up his community, the state, raise his family. And he's here with us right now as a representative of these veterans who put their lives on the line for this country and make us a better place for it. Now, one of the things I think we can all agree on is that it makes no sense that tonight, in this great state with a GDP of $2 trillion, the ninth largest economy on planet Earth, there will be veterans just like Andy who, instead of staying in a home like he does with Yolanda, are going to be sleeping under a bridge or on the streets or in a park right now. We have veterans who are taking their lives at a frightening rate in the state. The official rate of the United States of America is somewhere around 20 to 22 veterans per day take their lives. Far too many of them unable to get into a VA or to see a mental health care provider to be treated for their post-traumatic stress disorder or their traumatic brain injury or the signature conditions that they came back to this country with from the wars that we asked them to serve in right now. And those veterans from this generation, coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, exposed to toxic burn pits, breathing in God only knows what, and now having a hard time breathing and moving forward in their lives, we want to make sure that we do better for them as well. I think one thing, that as Republicans, as Democrats, as Independents, as Texans, that we can all agree on, is that we should spare no expense, shoulder any burden to make sure that these veterans get connected to the care that they need, the treatment they deserve, and the justice that they have earned. Let's start there because I think we can all agree with that. Let me talk about another public servant in this room, and that is the public school educator. The classroom teacher, the counselor, the librarian, the school bus driver, the support staff, the people who make public education possible, and those retirees who gave the best years of their lives to draw forth a lifelong love of learning from those kids in those schools and those classrooms. Retirees who have not seen a cost of living adjustment since the year of our Lord 2004, in the state of Texas. Imagine being a retiree who you gave every ounce of everything you had for 30, 40 years to those kids in that classroom, and you're trying to survive on basically the same amount that you were paid in 2004 after all of the inflation that we've seen right here in the state of Texas. That's not just. Nor is it that when we pay teachers in Texas, we don't pay them enough to not have to work a second or a third job just to make ends meet. Y además, in addition, we're having them focus on high stakes, high pressure tests that in no way effectively measure the performance or potential of that kid or all the effort going forth from that teacher. Listen, if I were governor right now, I'd listen to you and I'd cancel the STAR test in the state of Texas and replace it with something that actually works. I make sure those teachers are paid enough not to work that second job. We have an annual cost of living adjustment for those retired teachers. And we would treat you with the respect and dignity that you've earned and that you deserve. We can all agree on that regardless of the differences between us. Let me try another one on for you. This state, through the first Texan to ever be president of the United States, came up with this idea that we now call Medicaid, which means that you should not be too poor in order to be able to see a doctor or fill a prescription or take your kids to a mental health care provider if that's what they need to be healthy enough and well enough to go back to school or work their job or raise their family or do whatever God placed them on this planet to do in the first place. But because our current governor has not taken yes for an answer and refused to expand Medicaid in the state of Texas, we are the least insured in the United States in America. More kids in this state die of diabetes than in any other in the union. Our largest provider of mental health care services in this state and in this county in Midland is the county jail. How many people have I met who tell me that their folks or their brother or some loved one in their life literally gets arrested on purpose to go to jail, the one place that they are guaranteed some level of care, just some level of care at a cost to you and I of $120 a night to keep them locked up and to make sure they have a bed and maybe access to some psychotropic medications for a day or two, and then they're on their own, on the streets, maybe purchasing drugs, there to stay alive. Listen, if I were governor, with your help, we would expand Medicaid, bring $10 billion more in health care spending into our communities, hire more providers. A gentleman approached me earlier as I walked in and said, hey, Bethel, I want to work with you in organizing in rural Texas. Tomorrow we're going to Snyder. We're going to go to communities that are smaller than that going forward, like Stanford, Texas, where both of their hospitals have shut down. 24 rural hospitals have closed down in the last 10 years. Try raising your family when you cannot take them to see a doctor or provider or deliver a child. Try getting your young daughter or son to move back to your community when there are no health care options there. Keep teachers on the payroll when you're already underpaying them and they cannot get healthy in their own community. Listen, we accept Medicaid. 90 cents on the dollar for expansion comes from the federal government. That's your and my federal income taxes coming back to the state of Texas. And the kicker is, in addition to reopening some of these hospitals, connecting more people with care, hiring providers in underserved communities, I will make sure that we lower your property tax bill because right now you are funding uneducated care. If you love high property taxes, then just stay with the guy you have right now. If you want to bring them down and do something about inflation and the cost of living in the state of Texas, then we've got to make smart, bipartisan decisions. Again, this isn't for Democrats. This is not for Republicans. This is for all of us, making sure that you can see a doctor and be healthy enough and well enough to live to your full potential. As I was listening to Madeline up here talk about why she supports us and why she's politically engaged, she talked about young people not having to fear going to school when the school year starts in Texas, fearing that they may be gunned down in their very classroom with someone who's wielding a weapon originally designed for use in war and combat, whose high-impact, high-velocity rounds can shred everything inside you, destroying the soft tissue, the veins, the arteries, the organs, everything that keeps you alive to pieces. And I'm sorry, but you all know this all too well from the shootings here in 2019, as we do in El Paso when we lost 23 people in that community. Last Sunday before last, I was in Uvalde again, meeting with those families. Parents of children who were up against an AR-15, who could only identify the bodies of their children by the shoes that they were wearing. Listen, we don't have to accept this as our future, our fortune, or the fate of our kids. And they're depending on us, right? They can't vote. They don't really have a say in this democracy the way that those who are eligible to and registered to vote have a say in this democracy. And we may not agree on every aspect of this issue, but as I listen to you and our fellow Texans, here are some guidelines or common ground that I think we can move forward on. A universal background check ensures that anybody who purchases a firearm in this state goes through some basic vetting to make sure they're not going to be a danger to themselves or someone else. When the Midland, Odessa shooter tried to buy a firearm from a licensed firearms dealer and was rejected because the background check in that case worked, he was still, because we don't have universal background checks in Texas, able to buy that same firearm from a private seller and use it against people in this community. Another idea, it's called a red flag law. And what that means is that if somebody is threatening violence to themselves, if they're threatening violence to those in their lives, in their schools, at their workplace, and they have a firearm in the house, through due process, we can intervene before it's too late. That Uvalde shooter was sending off signs in every single direction that if he had a gun in his hand, he was going to use it against people in that community, maybe in that school where he ultimately did. A red flag law says, hey, you know what? Something's not right in this household. You have a firearm that can do a lot of damage to a lot of kids. We're going to remove it from your custody until we are assured that you are better and you're not going to hurt anybody else. Red flag laws will stay alive. And while you may or may not agree with me on this one, I don't think anybody should have an AR-15 or an AK-47 because that's good for the battlefield, it's good for a war zone, it doesn't make sense in our community. Even if you disagree with me on that, maybe we can agree that you should be at least 21 years old before you purchase one, right? This kid waited until his 18th birthday. The law in this case worked that far. But then it didn't because he bought 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Listen, we are a proud people with a long tradition of responsible gun ownership. I'm part of this tradition. I grew up in West Texas just like you did, only a lot more West Texas than you did out there in El Paso. I grew up with firearms in the household. My uncle Raymond was an El Paso County Sheriff's deputy. In fact, he was a captain at the county jail, and his greatest pride in his life was that he won the El Paso Sheriff's Department Marksman's Award. So he taught me and my 2 sisters how to shoot, how to aim, and how to use that gun responsibly. It's the same lesson that Amy and I impart to our 3 kids right now. It's the same thing that you all are doing in your households for those of you who have firearms. What I'm trying to say here, the other side is going to try to scare you into the last century on this issue. We are a people who know how to defend the Second Amendment while doing a far better job of protecting the lives of the people in our lives, right? Can we agree on that much? I hope so. Last one. Because this is important in the Permian Basin. This is important in Midland and Odessa. It's important in every part of Texas. When I was walking into the Stripes or the Valero station in Pecos before our town hall meeting earlier today, 2 guys recognized me in the gas station, wanted to shake hands, wanted to say hello, wanted to take a picture. I asked them what they did for a living. Both of them worked for a pipeline company. Now, oil and gas jobs have not only made this part of Texas and the planet successful, they've really fueled the success of our nation's economy. They've secured the energy independence of America from the rest of the world. Like you, I'm not looking forward to any more wars in the Middle East to secure our energy lines and our supply lines, right? The people of Texas, the people of this community have made that possible. And I drove here from El Paso in a Toyota Tundra that was made here in Texas that burns gasoline. And as long as we depend on this as a source of fuel and transportation and keeping the lights on in these buildings, I want it to come from Texas. And I want the jobs to be right here. But also, I want to make sure that we add to this energy leadership. The future of this world is moving in one direction, and Texas should own it. So whether it is wind or solar or hydrogen or geothermal or battery storage and the distribution out onto the grid, some country, some people are going to come up with the innovation, they'll possess the ingenuity, and they'll win the future. I want that to happen in Texas, and I want it to be headquartered right here in the Permian Basin. The best energy jobs in the world, we want them right here. So hear me out. We support our veterans. We want world-class schools by getting the backs of our public school educators. We want the best jobs in America created right here in Texas, right here in the Permian Basin. And when it comes to being healthy, we want to expand Medicaid so everyone can see a doctor. On that much, I think almost every single one of us can agree. Now, when I look at the other side of the ledger, when I look at the incumbent, the man in the highest position of public trust, the man in power right now, do I think that he wants people to be hurt or unhealthy or injured or to do bad? No, I don't. I don't think he's an evil person. We don't see things the same way. Did he want those kids to be shot in Uvalde? Absolutely not. Did he want the grid to fail last February? Of course he did not. Does he want CPS, Child Protective Services, to be the worst run foster care program in the United States, bar none? Probably not. That's not what he wakes up wanting to do. But for whatever reason, Greg Abbott is unable or unwilling to do the things to make our lives better. And so now is the time to turn the page and to move forward with someone, with a campaign, with some people who will focus on making sure that we do the big things in Texas. Let the other side have the culture wars. Let them tell us who we're supposed to hate and be afraid of, and what the next boogeyman is, who's not supposed to love one another, who's not supposed to raise their child the way that they're raising their child. That's their ugliness on their side. We are about doing the big things and bringing people together and making sure that this state realizes its full promise and its full potential. The last thing that I'll tell you, and I'm going to turn this microphone over to people in the audience via my friend Cynthia Conlon. Last thing that I'm going to tell you is that I cannot do this on my own, nor do you expect me to. Nor will this be about the Democratic Party. I happen to be a Democrat, but this is not for Democrats. It's not for Republicans. It is for all of us. And it's going to take all of us to make this happen. Now listen, if I say anything that I just said to somebody who lives here, maybe it'll make an impact, maybe not. If you say from your own heart, in your own words, your version of why you are here tonight, to your family member, to your colleague, to your classmate, to your neighbor, to the folks that you all know on social media here in the Basin, they're more likely to listen to you, to believe you, and to act on what you're saying. There are a number of people who are wearing these yellow vests among us here tonight. Raise your hands and raise your clipboards if you've got a yellow vest on. They will sign you up to knock on doors and go out there and meet the people who can decide the outcome of this election. Let me tell you who they are. In 2020, the most consequential presidential election of our lifetimes, 30,000 people in Midland County who were eligible to didn't cast a ballot. Since 2020, 10,000 new people have entered the rolls. We're at 40,000 people whose voices we have not yet heard, whose votes have not yet been counted. I want to send you to their doors to ask you to invite them into this democracy. When pollsters and survey political scientists ask these folks why they didn't vote, number one reason given is that no one asked them to vote. You need to be the person who does that. You fly under the radar of Fox News or MSNBC. It's not just a hunch. It's not just that this many of you showed up on a Wednesday night here in Midland. Everything that we can look at measure, shows us moving in the right direction. 78,000 people have signed up to take volunteer shifts to knock on doors in the state of Texas. In addition, last Friday we posted that we raised more money than Greg Abbott by almost $3 million. 500,000 unique contributions were made to this campaign. And the polls, or whatever they count for these days, in December when we first launched this campaign, They had us down 15 points to Greg Abbott. I don't even remember seeing that poll. It was so bad. I just deleted it from my mind as soon as I saw it. So that was done by Quinnipiac. They are the gold standard in political polling in the United States of America. The second time that Quinnipiac takes a look at Texas was 3 weeks ago, and they find us down just 5 points and gaining ground. We must lead by 10 in 6 months. Imagine what we're going to do over the next 3.5 months with your help. This is not only possible, we are going to do it. And as Texans, we know we've done bigger things against greater odds before. But it's going to take each and every single one of us to make it happen. So let me ask you, are you with me on this? Yeah. I'm with you as well. Looking forward to running this race with you and winning it with you and for you on November 8th. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the I'm going to take your questions. Hear what you got to say. This Conroe.
All right, if you raise your hand, I will make my way to
When we were in Pecos, I was saying, Cynthia's in the orange or pink shirt. Somebody said it's salmon. Salmon place. This is what salmon looks like. We're going to get to as many of these questions and comments as we possibly can. I will be as brief as I can in responding.
Okay. So, what are the most important ways you're going to make the state better?
You get right to the point. I like this. If we can ask you a question, how old are you?
9.
9 years old. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for you. Thank you for being here. We're doing this for you. We're counting on you. I think about what you're going to think when you're 20, or when you're 30, or when you're 40, and you've got your own kids. When you're 70 and you're raising your grandkids, and you're going to look back on all of us in 2022, and you're going to see that a woman's right to make her own decisions was under attack with this state. They were proposing a Don't Say Gay bill in the next session of the legislature, that they couldn't keep the lights on in the state of Texas, that inflation was going through the roof and people could not afford to stay in their homes, that we were so polarized and divided, we couldn't get anything done. And you're going to want to know, what did we do at this moment of truth? Did we lose it forever, or did we win it back for everybody in Texas? And so this is what we're going to do. We talked about the 3 big things. We're going to focus on world-class schools so that you and your classmates have the best teachers, the best education, the best performance, the best outcomes. You work the best jobs. You create the best businesses, the best pieces of art. The wonderful things that you are going to do in your life are made possible by the extraordinary teachers who pull that capacity from you. So we're going to make sure that we have their backs. We're going to make sure that when you graduate from high school, if you want to go to college, cost is not going to be an option. If you want to work right away, or join a union and an apprenticeship program, if you want to go into a trade, if you want to make sure that you join so many others in this community who right outside of high school are working some of the most important energy jobs in America, we want to make sure that you have the training and the opportunity to do that as well. And then lastly, we want to make sure that you're healthy enough and well enough to live to your full potential. So again, cost cannot be an object. It can't be a function of privilege or luck that you get to see a doctor or fill a prescription or see a therapist or whatever you need if you ever need it. We want you to live to be your best. All of us in this room are behind you, and that's why we're running this campaign, and that's why we're going to win this race. So thank you for being here. Great job, world-class schools, and the ability to be a doctor. Thank you.
Behind you.
Hi, sir. How you doing? Good to see you. I just wanted to comment and challenge everybody here that there are 2 things that you can do to help Beto win and to help me in my race as well. 2 things. First, if you know someone here who dislikes the policies of Greg Abbott, who dislikes if you know someone who dislikes the policies of Ted Cruz, and they're not here, I want you to fix that person in your mind and then commit to getting that person to go to the polls. Not only that, but pass it forward. Ask them the same thing. Who do they know that does not like the policies of Ted Cruz or Greg Abbott, and take them to the polls to vote. Make sure they vote. The second thing is, how many of you would pay $5 to get rid of Greg Abbott or Ted Cruz? Everybody that has their hand up, I want you to go to BetoO'Rourke.com and become a sustaining donor of just $5 a month. Just $5 a month. And I ask that you do the same thing with my campaign to get rid of Ted Cruz. Go to John Love, Texas, and sacrifice $5 a month. I'm sure you blow $5 a month on Starbucks or something else. Gas is high, but you know what's worse than high gas? Greg Abbott and Ted Cruz. And the last thing I want to say is that we have to have the high ground. Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. You saw an example of that today when this, well, I can't call him a gentleman because there's nothing gentleman about him. But this man, and you saw how Beto reacted. You saw in Uvalde him stand before Dan Patrick, Greg Abbott. He was strong, but he had decency and he had respect. Listen, you can be strong and polite. You can put on a silk glove, and if you get punched in the face, you may say, ooh, that's silky smooth. But it's still gonna hurt. And that's what Beto O'Rourke does. That's what I'm trying to do. Let's get these idiots out of office.
How are you, Mr. Beto? Good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. I'm one that's never been into politics at all. I've been a chronic pain patient 24 years. And I want to hit on a little more about what you're talking about, all the hospitals closing, our wounded warriors, our vets committing suicide at the rate to the hundreds a day. Well, people don't know a lot of this. It's all because of the illegally enabled opioid prescribing guidelines that have done nothing but hurt people like me. I may look fit, but I've had 6 back surgeries, no colon, no rectum, 2 knee replacements, just had hand surgery last month. And it is absolute hell for me to get a very minimal amount of medication. I have to travel to Lubbock. It used to be to Dallas for 21 years. There's not one pain management doctor, one doctor in the Permian Basin that can write prescriptions for opioids, for pain, you know. And as far as the hospitals and stuff go like that, they're closing because our kids are not wanting to choose to be doctors. Because with, you know, the female stuff that's going on right now. And then chronic pain patients, who you know, it's $800,000 to $1 million to get the medical degree. You think these kids are going to go do that, not knowing, hell, this government may tell us we can't do this, we can't do that. We're screwed. You know, so I just want to say thank you. I've never been into politics until those guidelines went into place. And that other side has got to go. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. As everything you just said, you're all aware of what's going on. Let me address this really quickly. Just 2 quick points on this that your comments bring to mind. On the second issue, when you look at a medical school class, it is by and large made up of young people from suburbs and big cities. It's the exception to see somebody from rural Texas in one of those classes. This state, Gina tells me, used to have a program called the Rural Scholars Program. And what this said is, if you come from one of our rural counties and you want to go to medical school, but you otherwise cannot afford it, we will pay your way, the full way, on the condition that you come back to Fort Stockton, you come back to Pecos, you come back to Snyder and give 6 years of your life practicing medicine in a community that made it possible for you to do well. I met one of these doctors who was through that program. He his 8th year, he's now in his 10th year back in Fort Stockton. He's not going anywhere. He's satisfied the demands on his side of the requirement, but he's put down roots. He's raising his family there, and he's a provider in an underserved community that otherwise would not have had one. We don't have that program in Texas anymore. When we win this, we're going to restore it to make sure that rural Texas gets the value that they need. On pain management, we need to make sure that there are more clinics and centers, more available to more people in the state. But there's one other thing that we got to do, and the loudest voice in this conversation, the most compelling one for me, has been that of a veteran who has come back from Vietnam, who's come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and said, the VA will willingly prescribe me an opioid, to which I may become addicted, from which I may ultimately die. But the thing that makes me feel best, it allows me to address my symptoms, it makes life worth living, I can eat and I can sleep, is marijuana. And if I buy and use that in the state of Texas, I'm a criminal in the eyes of the law. So when we win this, we're going to legalize marijuana so that people can the fact that Texans of all races and ethnicities currently use marijuana at roughly the same rate, even if they're not doing so legally. Disproportionately, it is black and brown Texans who are stopped, who are frisked, who are arrested, who serve time in jail, who upon release have a conviction on their record. Every time they're trying to get a student loan or apply for a job, they have to check a box saying they have that conviction. So in addition to legalizing, we're going to expunge the arrest record of everybody who is serving time for marijuana. Thanks for bringing these things up.
Okay, I was born a Republican. I've never voted Democrat in all my life. I'm a Native American, and my question is for the border. What do you plan to do about the border, about the millions of people that are coming in to the United States? You know, we have more people coming in through Texas because I've been following them on it. So I was going for the other guy, I'm not gonna lie. But I came here to hear your point of view, see what you're gonna do about the border. And another question, all my sons, my son-in-laws, I have 7 children, and they all work for the oil fields. I don't want them to be jobless. I don't want them to be in unemployment. I don't want them to lose their homes, you know. So give me a good reason to vote for you, that they're going to have employment, the borders are going to be closed, you know. I've been to El Paso. My husband goes to El Paso to see a doctor in Juarez because he has no doctor here can figure out what he has, you know. So we just go from doctor to doctor, you know, and it's hard. So, you know, you're running as a Democrat, you know, kind of makes me nervous, you know, to vote for a Democrat. But I'm here because, you know, I've heard you talk. I've been following you. I've been following your page. I read about you. I know all your stories. But what do you plan to do about the border? What is your border on that?
Thank you for being here. I think we're all impressed that you come out. Far too often, we find ourselves only talking and listening to people with whom we already agree. And the fact that you have the courage and made the effort to talk to someone and listen to someone with whom you may not agree is really inspiring to me. It gives me some hope for our democracy at this moment. So I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. You mentioned, just real quickly, oil and gas jobs. Let me just repeat what I said at the beginning. I want to protect and expand the energy jobs we have here, including oil and gas jobs in Midland, Odessa. We depend on it more than ever. You look at this recent invasion of Russia into Ukraine, 10% of what we were importing came from Russia in the first place. Let's make up that 10% right here in the state of Texas, and then maybe export some of what we are drilling right here over to Europe so they're no longer dependent on Russia going forward. And then expand on that with these renewable energy resources, because that's the way that the world is moving ultimately. So please tell your sons that message. On your primary question about the border, as you know, I live in El Paso. Amy and I are raising our 3 kids on the U.S.-Mexico border. Here's how I feel. This is what I'm going to do is go. If you want to come to this country, you want to join a family member, you want to work a job, you want to claim asylum or seek refuge, we want you to be able to do that. But you have to do that legally. You have to do that in an orderly fashion. And we're going to make sure that we honor the laws on our side. We want people to come to this country for those reasons. Many of us in this room, and not all of us, some are indigenous. Some were brought here, at least their ancestors were, against their will. Some, like the O'Rourke's, freely chose to come here because their families were dying in Ireland in the 19th century, and this is the only country that would take us in. But all of us together have made this the great country and the great state that it is. And I know that will continue to happen, but they've got to do it in an orderly way. It has to be a legal way. And listen, what if Texas elected a governor who would work on rewriting our immigration laws to match our ideals and our values, our necessities, and the reality that we see? What if we had a governor who wasn't trying to scare you about people coming over here to get you? You know, the current governor, on the eve of that El Paso shooting, where 23 of my neighbors lost their lives, sent out a mailer talking about an invasion, asking Texans to defend themselves and take matters into their own hands. I guarantee you that guy in Allen, Texas, was listening to that kind of rhetoric when he put that AK-47 into his car, drove it 600 miles to El Paso, opened fire on people in that Walmart, and killed them because, he said, came to kill Mexicans and repel the invasion of immigrants that were taking over this country and replacing him as a white man in Texas. Now, that stuff didn't happen because he's crazy. Didn't happen because it was an act of God. It's evil, but it's not purely described in biblical terms. These are the understandable, logical consequences of people who traffic in this kind of hatred, these kinds of lies about immigrants and unfriendly. So let's make sure that we do the right thing. Safe, legal, orderly, and we rewrite our laws to reflect our values. Thank you for coming here. Afterwards, I'm going to ask you how I did and whether we can count on your vote, okay? Thank you, but no pressure, all right? Thank you. Here we go.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for being here, Mr. O'Rourke. My question was just like, so we've seen liberals have taken a win in the presidential office, and even in some Senate races around the nation. We've seen people get into power. We even have a majority in the House and Senate right now, but we've seen a failure to get things passed and done. So if you are to be elected, we're still in a majority red state. It's like, what are you going to do to get bills through and move through our state legislature?
Great question. Thank you for being here. Yeah. I mean, all these ideas sound great, but they're worth nothing if we can't get them done, to the question that was just asked. And listen, I am banking on Susan Hayes being elected as our next agriculture commissioner. I'm banking on more Democrats getting elected to statewide offices, but also to the state legislature. But there is a possibility, maybe even a probability, that as governor, I'll be working with a Republican majority chamber. So how are we going to get these things done? First of all, it helps, and what we're talking about doing is in the common interest of all of us and has bipartisan support to begin with. So Medicaid expansion, for example, is it going to help El Paso and Austin and Houston and Dallas and San Antonio? Absolutely. But is it going to help our rural Republican represented communities even more? Oh, you better believe me. It's going to have more dollars going into these places to prop up clinics, reopen hospitals, bring in providers in places where you have to drive hundreds of miles to see a doctor right now. Those Republican representatives care for their community just as much as the Democrats do. If we offer them a pathway to get that done, give a little bit, right? As we take a little bit, make sure that we arrive at something close to a consensus that actually works. I promise you, we're going to get Medicaid expansion passed. When it comes to school teachers, you know, there's this plan by the current governor to privatize your tax dollars and send them to private schools in the form of vouchers, right? Some of you may like that. I happen not to. Our 3 kids go to public schools. We're public school taxpayers. We want our public schools to do better. Now, that issue resonates in El Paso. It resonates in Austin. But you know where it really resonates? In these rural Republican represented communities where there is no private school. The only school there is the public school. It's the largest employer in the community, and it's being drained of funds right now. You better believe that those Republican school teachers and support staff that they represent are going to be pushing on them to come to the table with us and make a deal to raise teacher pay and fully fund public education. Those are just 2 examples of where I think we're going to have consensus and agreement. Last thing that I want to tell you is that I've got some experience in doing this. For 6 years, I had the honor of serving my community in the United States Congress. And for each day of those 6 years, I served on the House Veterans Affairs Committee. The honor of my life. It's the last place that most of my colleagues wanted to go. It was the punishment room, it was the basement, because you couldn't raise money there. There were no political action committees that had a vested interest in the outcome. There were no ribbon cuttings, there were no headlines. It just wasn't a sexy issue for most people. But having been inspired after meeting and working with so many veterans in my community and knowing the troubles that we had and connecting them with care that they needed, that's where I wanted to be. At a town hall meeting just like this, veteran stood up and he said, "Hey Beto, I hear you talk a lot about mental health care and veteran suicide, and I know you're doing work on that, thank you very much. But I'm a veteran who has what is called an other than honorable discharge. And the consequence of my status of discharge, I can't set foot in a VA. I can't see a provider for the PTSD that I came home from Afghanistan with. And the suicide rate amongst OTH veterans is twice as high as the general veterans population. What are you, Beto, going to do about this?" So I wrote this bill called the Honor Our Commitment Act that would open up VA care to those veterans with an OTH discharge, at least for mental health care to treat PTSD. But I was in a Republican majority institution, and Donald J. Trump was the president of the country. I'd have to get it across both chambers and onto his desk to make this happen. So I took that bill to my committee. I worked with a Republican colleague named Mike Kaufman from Colorado. He said, "I like the idea, I like most of what's in this bill. There are some things I don't like. Beto, would you be willing to compromise?" Pause. Compromise is a 4-letter word in both of our major political parties right now. No one wants to be a part of it, right? Because you can grandstand, you can raise money, you can blow VA on just being as pure as the driven snow. But you're not going to be able to get anything done and make people's lives better. So of course I compromise. We took that bill to the floor of the United States House of Representatives, made our case, say, hey, are we going to have to spend more to take care of these veterans? Absolutely, but we think we should pay any price. Should there be a consequence for the status of discharge if they screwed up? Yep, but it shouldn't be their life through suicide. We got that sucker passed 435 to 0. We got it passed in the Senate, and the one man on this planet with whom I agree on almost nothing, Donald J. Trump, signed it into law. We are now saving more lives as a result of this. So bipartisanship works. It's still alive. I mean, there are Republicans in this room right now who took the time to be here to listen to one another. In the 2018 race, check this out, last part of my answer. There were more than 8 million ballots cast. It was the highest turnout in Texas since 1970 for a midterm election. Of those 8 million ballots cast, 500,000 of those people voted for me for U.S. Senator. Those same 500,000 voted for Greg Abbott for governor of the state of Texas. The last time he and I were on the ballot together, we split the votes of 500,000 Texans. There are independent voters out there. There are swing voters. There are people who come to meetings like these and ask very thoughtful questions so they can make informed decisions at the ballot box. We are going to appeal to them, we are going to work for them, and we're going to deliver for them when we win this. Thank you for coming out and asking that great
question. Hi, first of all, this is terrifying. Hello, everybody. I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but I am scared right now, honestly. I came out today because I followed your campaign. Your best friend Yolanda has obviously kept me in the loop. I think with everything going on, obviously Roe versus Wade, I am a female of childbearing age. I have a wonderful fiance, and until Roe versus Wade was overturned, we were considering starting a family. We were considering starting a family here in Texas, a state that I am born and raised in. I love my community, and I have great support from my family. I am terrified of what that could mean if I become pregnant and something goes wrong. I've read so many stories about people my age who want children, who something happens and their healthcare team here in this state advises them to drive hours away or go across the border to get reproductive care. So I guess if I know that scares me, it terrifies me as someone who has familial support and has means to potentially raise a child here. I can't even imagine what that means for people who aren't as privileged as I am, for people who struggle to meet their healthcare needs and who struggle to find the proper education and things like that. So I guess My question, concern to you is kind of what do you think the next step would be here in Texas?
Thank you for being here. You did great. And thank you for putting this in terms that engages our empathy, right? Not all of us are in the same situation that you are, but by vulnerably telling us what's going through your mind, all of us are connected with you right now. It's no longer an abstract concept, if it is that for some. It's not something far away or distant. It's right here in the room with us right now. One of the great privileges of being a candidate, running statewide, and being in meetings like these is I've met so many people who've been so generous in telling their stories to me. We were in Dallas last week, and a woman told me that she has really bad arthritis, and I forget the form of arthritis that it is. The medication that she uses can also be used to terminate pregnancies. Because that medication can be used to terminate pregnancies, and because she's of childbearing age, no doctor in the state of Texas will prescribe that medication for her, something that makes her life worth living so that she can use the limbs on her body. So she travels to California. Pretty soon, I bet you she will leave the state of Texas. We were in Fort Bend County, month before last. A young woman comes up to me with her 4-month child in the stroller. They're about to go knock on doors with us. And she said, Beto, I was as pro-life as they come until I was pregnant with this little guy. And it was the most difficult pregnancy I could imagine. The only thing keeping me going, literally keeping me alive, was the knowledge that I had choices and options. And if it became too complicated, if my life was in danger, then there was going to be an opportunity for me to make my own decisions for my health care, for our future, for myself. And so now I'm out here knocking on doors for you, Beto, because I'm pro-choice, because I understand what that choice confers. You're asking me what we're going to do about the fact that abortion is outlawed in Texas with no exception for rape and no exception for incest. This is pretty tough because we also lead the developed world in the rate of maternal mortality, particularly bad for black women in the state of Texas. In fact, 3 times as bad for black women as it is for white women in the state of Texas. We're losing too many of our Texas women. So we've got to do the right thing. First order of business is to win this election. Imagine if, for the first time in 32 years, this state elects a pro-choice Democrat to the highest office in the world. You better believe that's going to give us some leverage and some opportunities and some options to move things forward. And to the question that was just asked earlier, how are we going to find common ground? My formerly very Republican and still very Catholic mom, and I maybe don't agree on every aspect of this, but when I tell her about maternal mortality, when I share with her some of the stories that I've heard, and I'll share with her yours next time I see her, when I talk about the consequences of a policy that she might have thought was done for the best of reasons, she says, you know what, Beto, that's not what I want. In fact, when pollsters ask the majority of Texans, even those describing themselves as pro-life, they do not want a total ban on abortion without exceptions for rape or incest in the state of Texas. It's a minority of a minority. It's the fringe, it's the extreme, it's the edge of the edge. That's what convinces me, to the question that I answered earlier, that we're going to be able to bring people to the table, including Republicans. And there are pro-choice Republicans among us. And there are some who consider themselves pro-life, but will make common sense decisions on common ground to improve this. In addition, y además, I was asked to add some Spanish to my speaking, and I will. Now I'll give some answers in Spanish in a moment. Y además, there's much that we can do through executive action in the governor's office. There's much that we can do by working with other statewide elected leaders and listening to, working with, and partnering with people like you in local communities. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that as governor, every woman makes her own decisions about her own body, her own future, and her own health. Thank you for asking the question.
So I just want to, I was reminded there is a voter registration table right here. So if anybody is not registered to vote, we have certified VDRs and they are willing to do it, ready to do it, and it'll just take a few minutes. So please come visit the table if you are not registered to vote.
Thank you all for doing that work, by the way. Not easy to become a volunteer deputy registrar. You got to go down to the county courthouse, pass a quick exam, get signed up, but they're doing this to bring anybody onto the rolls who is not yet registered. So they're right over here at this table. Ms. Connell? Great. Hey there.
What's up, man?
Thank you for being here.
Thanks. So I'm from Houston originally, and anyways, in the urban cities, so Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, there's been an increase in gun violence and gun deaths. One of the reasons why there's such an increase is because there's an increase in the amount of guns. It's so easy to get guns in Houston. And when I say easy, what I mean is I can literally go to a gas station in certain neighborhoods. We all know what I'm talking about. Hey man, you know how to get a, and I say maybe I can ask 2 or 3 people and I'll be able to get a gun in my hands, right? And then with those guns, be able to commit violence, deaths, things of that nature. Although I haven't heard you speak on it, if you do become governor, are there plans to, number one, get a lot of those illegal guns off the streets? And then what do you do as far as trying to decrease, some of the homicides that are happening because of these guns?
Thanks for asking the question. Listen, it is one of the reasons that I, perhaps you, and a majority of Texans really disagree with the governor on permitless carry. In the 5 years prior to Abbott signing that into law, 38,000 licenses to carry a firearm in public were denied because the people requesting them were deemed too dangerous to themselves or to their community. Now that permitless carry is in law, despite law enforcement pleading with the governor not to do this, saying this will jeopardize the lives of our officers and our sheriff's deputies. He turned his back on them, he did it anyhow. All 38,000 of those who had their licenses denied can very well be armed and loaded on our streets. We're none the wiser or the safer for it. And then to your point, tens of thousands of people who knew better than to ever apply for a license to carry because they never would have passed the criminal background check, or they had a history of violence against their spouse or their girlfriend or their boyfriend, they're now able to carry guns out there as well. And Texas today has more cops, guns down, than any other state. As the gentleman just said, we've had a spike in gun violence, totally predictable. When you flood the market with this many guns, with no universal background check, no red flag law, no ability to intervene when we know somebody poses a danger to themselves or to someone else. So to your question, I'm going to start with the common ground and the common sense. Things like a universal background check, things like a red flag law, things like safe storage laws. And then really make sure that we take this next step, which I haven't heard many people talk about, but that is to go after the impunity with which gun manufacturers are able to sell these into our communities without facing any legal consequences at all. If you all saw the advertising for the manufacturer who produced the gun that 18-year-old in Uvalde purchased, I mean, they were selling to kids just like him, and free of any consequence or accountability or justice for doing that. If those manufacturers and those gun sellers know that there are going to be consequences for the way that they indiscriminately sell in the community, sometimes knowingly selling to people who pose a danger, then we're going to get better performance, better actions out of them, and our streets will be safer. That does not solve every part of the problem that you just posed, but it makes some progress, and it's a place where I think we can get agreement between Democrats and Republicans, gun owners and non-gun owners. Thanks for asking the question. Thanks for being here.
All right, I have 3 more questions left.
Faltamos 3 más. Preguntas.
Thank you, Bill, and good evening, everybody. Thank you first of all for being here. I'm Billy Johnson, and I'm the current Justice of the Peace for Precinct 3. Born and raised here in East Midland. Actually, I worked in this building at one time when it was Northeast YMCA once upon a time. Attended school at New Freshman, Legacy Freshman across the street here. Pease Elementary just down the road. And then a few blocks east where my mom and dad still live. I took Dad to the doctor this morning. So 52 years in that house. And so East Midland means a lot to me. I have my family here with me right now. So what I want to point out is just look around the room for a minute. This looks like what America should look like. For the most part, acting like what America should act like. Now I can tell you, everybody here is probably not Democrat. Everybody in here is probably not Republican, but we got Democrats, Republicans, Independents. We have black, we have white, we have brown. So when I walk into that office every day and look at my docket to see what am I dealing with today, not one time in 16 years has there been a black case, a brown case, a Republican case, or a Democrat case. It just doesn't happen. We deal with the folks that come before us, as it should be. The late Judge John Hyde said to me one day early on in my career, as long as you're there, you judge and you rule on what's in front of you, not who's in front of you. And that means we look at the laws, we look at the rules, we look at evidence. And I'm going to say something about some of my family here. My wife and my son are both here. They're both public school teachers. They teach everybody that comes into that classroom every day. And my sister-in-law and my brother here. My sister-in-law is a teacher right down in Pease right now. She teaches everybody that comes into their classroom every day. My brother's a principal. He works with any child that comes into their classroom every day. So what I want to say is just look around the room for a minute. If you don't take but one thing with you when you leave tonight, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I will follow that up. One of my favorite scriptures from the book of Romans. For I say, through the grace given to me, to every man among you, not to think more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, because God has dealt to every man a measure of faith. We all have a different role to play, whether we're black, white, brown, Republican, Democrat, or whatever. Just look around. Look around. And when you watch the news this evening, what are you watching? MSNBC, what are you watching? Fox, whatever you're watching. You just remember something. Remember how civil this is right here. And don't tell me we can't do it. We're doing it right now. We're doing it right now. Thank you.
Judge, thank you. And as you introduced every member of your family, this is a family that's dedicated to public service and the community. And I echo everything that you just said. I believe in everything that you just said. This cannot be about our differences. This has to be what binds us together, the common ground that we see. And we're doing it right here in this room. Let's do it outside of this room going forward. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate it.
We have Kathy Broderick, the Democrat from Midland.
Hi. Thank y'all all so much. This is just so awesome, all of y'all coming out here to see Beto O'Rourke, the next governor of our state of Texas.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
We have lots of sheets of paper over here when people signed up to be a host for a block walk. Thank you so much for doing that. I will be at every one of them. I will walk every block with you. I will talk with you. If you don't know what to say, I will teach you what to say when we get to that door.
Yes, you will.
Because you're going to go knock knock. And they're going to say, yes. Who are you? Well, I'm Kathy. And I'm a volunteer for the Beto campaign. And we're walking around talking about this great candidate for governor. And he's going to make our schools better. He is going to expand Medicare. He is going to do all sorts of things that is going to make this state the best state and what it should be. And so if you can't walk those blocks with us, I have lots of other things that you can help me do. If you've got a pickup and a toolbox, I've got 20 of those big Beto signs. We got to find a place for them. Y'all help me find those places so the most people can see them. You can man that office hours for me down there, and we're going to get a bunch of yard signs, and we're going to help get those out. And we're going to drive around. We're going to talk to every one of the people that we mail ballots to, and we're going to make sure they understand how to fill that out correctly. Are y'all with me?
There we go. There we go.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Beto.
Thank you, Kathy.
I would never have been the chair of the Midland Democratic Party if it wasn't for this man right here. Because I was sitting home in 2016 and thought, what the heck? I love y'all too. And as I was thinking, what the heck, I thought, somebody needs to do. And I thought, well, I'm somebody. And so I'm going to do this. I want y'all to do it with me. If you just Google Midland Democratic Party, there's a phone number there. It just forwards it right straight to my personal cell phone. And I'll make a plan with you work with you about what you can do to help us. Thank y'all.
All right, Kathy, thank you. What a great story.
Okay, my last question is over here, but Miss Yolanda wants to say something, and I'm not going to say no to her.
I'm so glad you're here, Bagel. I'm Yolanda Hernandez, and I've always voted Democrat. But there's something about this man that I really, really like. I'm like her that in 2016, I didn't know what I was going to do. But for everyone that's in here, if you have a computer, if you have a couple of stamps you can give away or something, write letters for Beto. Write letters for the Democratic Party. Do not be afraid to say what's on your mind. Do not be afraid to ask this man. If you put him in office, you have a right to ask this man what's on your mind. So please vote for Beto. Help us out. Please write letters, make phone calls, walk. Whatever you can do, we would appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. And again, the folks in the yellow vests are willing to sign up, happy to sign you up. May not let you leave unless you sign up. No, you don't. You can leave, but we do want you on this team. That's how we're going to win it. Thank you, Yolanda, for setting the example.
All right.
Okay, I think this
is our last question right here.
I'm terrified too, but I'm terrified for different reasons. As a queer woman in this part of the state and in Texas in general, I'm terrified. So tell me how you're going to protect me, how you're going to make sure that I have the same rights to marry who I want to marry. To have sex with who I want to have sex with. And to be fair, I want to pose this question to this man too. Tell me how you're going to protect me and my community.
Thank you for being here. So one of the lessons I've learned, and many of you got to this conclusion before I did, you're better than I am. I think I was naive on this. I thought for far too long that progress in this country was inevitable, and it was linear, just moved in a straight line. Maybe it didn't go as fast as we wanted to, but look at what we did in 1973 with Roe versus Wade. Look at marriage equality decided by the Supreme Court. Look at the progress that we're making. It's only moving in one direction. Well, obviously, I now understand that none of these victories are final. Progress is not inevitable. And here's the tough thing. For every one of us, and we've got to get this into our heads, we've got to let this rest in our heart. The fight is never over. We can win this election in November. The fight has just begun. We can finish 4 years in office. The fight is far from done. We will be fighting these fights for the rest of our lives. The other side, think about the work they've been doing for the last 49 years to bring us to the Dobbs decision. Not for a moment did they rest in this struggle and in this fight. And too many of us, myself as an example, took previous successes for granted that we benefited from and never had to fight for. In the Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe versus Wade, there is a concurring opinion from Justice Thomas that says next on the block is contraception in the United States of America. Next on the block is marriage equality. Next on the block is intimate relations between same-sex partners. You couldn't have cooked this stuff up for me 5 years ago, and I would have believed it. It is now a reality today, and you know that they're already working on it in the state legislature to make illegal the things that have been so hard-won in the past. So you're asking, what are we going to do? Well, right here and right now, I'm going to tell you that I'm fighting for you and every single person in this state to love whomever they want to love, to be with whoever they want to be with, to marry the person of their dreams, just as you and me are doing, to make sure that that right is sustained and protected for the rest of our lives, and that we pass this fight on to our kids and to our grandkids, because if we've learned nothing else, this fight is never over. In a state that is now proposing in the next legislative session a Don't Say Gay bill. I'm not making this up, they are doing it. In a state where literally already in libraries, maybe here in Midland and Odessa, hand trucks are going in and carting out books that those in power deem offensive, including about same-sex relationships. In a state where it is perfectly legal to deny you the ability to adopt a child because of your orientation or because you're a member of the LGBTQ community. In a state where the governor promises to pursue every parent of a transgender child for child abuse and remove that kid and every other kid in the household and turn them over to CPS, which has lost the lives of 100 kids since the year 2020. That's all happening right now in the state of Texas. The only way to overcome that is to win this election and to keep fighting every single day of our lives. And you've got my support, I've got your back, you need to do this fight with us, okay? Les agradezco a todos. Gracias por ser parte de esta campaña. Necesitamos hablar con y escuchar a todos en nuestras comunidades. No me importa si son republicanos o demócratas o independientes, los temas más importantes, incluyendo la educación pública, incluyendo los tipos de trabajos que podemos tomar aquí en este estado y en este condado, incluyendo la oportunidad de ir a un doctor, son los temas más importantes por todos. Si todos quieren trabajar, ser parte con esta campaña como voluntario o voluntaria, vamos a ganar en la noche del 8 de noviembre. ¿Quieres hacerlo? Do you all want to win on November 8th? It's going to be up to all of us to make this happen. Thank you for being here. We'll stick around for a while to say hello and to take pictures. Please sign up to volunteer. Thank you.
Hello everyone, we're going to be doing pictures over by the Texas flag over there on the green wall. Please line up on this side on the stage, going this way towards the other green wall. Make a line and make an